Hi, my name is Casper Low and welcome to my presentation. Today we will be discussing about the cultural environment. But first, so here's my agenda. But before we begin, I'd like you to meet my new friend.
Hey, my name is Carrie. How are you? I spent my whole childhood in Labuan and moved to Mumbai, India to continue my high school. I then moved to Kuala Lumpur to do my A-levels for 2 years. Afterwards, I moved to Perth to pursue my Bachelor of Degrees.
So what is culture? Culture influences our perception of the world events and thereby influences our values, attitudes, and behaviors. Culture can make a difference in determining how we think and how we behave. Core cultural dimensions, or the CCDs, are the 5 dimensions emerged as being the most commonly used by researchers and managers. These are power distribution, social relationships, environmental relationships, time and work patterns, and uncertainty and social control. By analyzing the interview, we can compare Carrie's behavior to the core cultural dimensions. Upon interviewing Carrie, I learned that she recognized and paid high respect to elderly people and superiority at her workplace. She mentioned that she would not question the authority of her manager even though it's not part of her job. Here in Australia, addressing people by their first name was difficult for her at first as she felt anxious. Next is the social relationship. Carrie is more of a group-centered person as she tries to blend in the group. For instance, she likes to dress up more openly to express herself. Unlike Asian countries, people are more conservative on how they bring themselves. Being an Asian person, it was difficult for her to adapt to the normal practices of Australians. Carrie's exposure to Australian culture has taught her so much. One of it is being individualistic. She also learned how to have confidence in herself to be more direct. As she confessed that rejecting a personal request was difficult for her at first, she would rather be indirect or be quiet to avoid conflicts. Next would be the environmental relationship. Carrie is not an outgoing person, as she feels anxious and scared traveling alone. She also finds it challenging to adapt to new environments. She does not embrace change and would rather avoid uncertainty as she prefers comfort and security. Ever since she's been in Perth, she have never been around WA. The 4th dimension is time and work patterns. Carrie has mentioned that she have never been late before in her classes and work. In fact, she is always 5 minutes earlier. Asians are pretty much known for their Asian time, which means they're always late by half an hour to an hour. One of the huge changes Carrie have adopted in Australia is being punctual. At her workplace, she is always focused, but gets easily distracted. Also, Carrie tries to do work in sequence, but she always ends up multitasking, which she finds it hectic and disorganized, but somehow it works for her. Not to mention that she also tends to get things done earlier as she gets impatient at work. For the last dimension, uncertainty and social control. Carrie displayed more importance toward relationships than the rules. Her tolerance of rule breaking is moderate that she would actually turn a blind eye if a colleague made a mistake depending on the severity of the case. This is due to her decision making is often based on personal connection and hunches. So in summary of the findings from the comparison of her rooted culture to the Australian culture, Carrie displayed a few mixture of characteristics in the core cultural dimensions. The first characteristic that Carrie displayed is hierarchy, as respect is strongly embedded in her rooted culture. Next characteristic that Carrie showed is individualistic, as she is becoming a stronger independent woman, taking personal responsibilities more seriously and focused on achieving her future goals. The third characteristic that Carrie illustrated is harmony-oriented, as she is skeptic about changes and values the quality of life. The fourth characteristic that Carrie displayed is both monochronic and polychronic characteristics. She is punctual and impatient when she works, but she does multiple tasks at once and more people-centered approach. And lastly, Carrie portrayed a relationship-based characteristic, as she values relationship more compared to work. That being said, I conclude that some certain Asian culture still upholds within her while adapting to the current Australian values. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to email me. Thank you.
Created using Powtoon.